I've always loved hiking alone. There's a freedom to it. No chatter, no schedules. Just me, the wind in the trees, and the trail ahead. That's what brought me to Rocky Mountain National Park last September. On the first day, I took the Fern Lake Trail. The weather was crisp, the leaves just beginning to shift into their autumn colors. I saw maybe 3 other people the whole day. Perfect. But by day 2, something felt off. It started small. I'd stop to take a sip of water, and I'd hear a branch snap behind me. Then I started noticing subtle things. Faint boot prints next to mine, too fresh to be from yesterday. A clump of hair snagged on a low branch, human, not animal. And once, a stone on the path that hadn't been there when I passed earlier that morning. I didn't see anyone. Not once, but I felt someone. By day 3, I couldn't shake the feeling. I tried rationalizing. Maybe a ranger was monitoring the area. But no ranger hides behind trees or breathes heavily just out of sight. That night, I set up camp near Odessa Lake, my tent nestled between 2 pines. I built no fire and barely ate. I just sat in the dark, knife in hand, straining to hear over the wind. Around midnight, I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunching over twigs and needles, circling. I held my breath. My heart was slamming against my ribs like it was trying to break free. The steps stopped just outside the tent, then the unmistakable sound of fabric being brushed, fingertips against nylon. I didn't move, I didn't breathe. Minutes passed, then silence. I must have blacked out from fear because when I opened my eyes again, it was dawn. I burst out of the tent, knife drawn, but the forest was still. No tracks, no sign anyone had been there. Nothing. I packed up and practically ran the entire way back to the trailhead, not stopping once. Every gust of wind made me jump. Every bird call sounded like a whisper I couldn't quite hear. I never saw a face, never heard a voice, but I know someone was there, and I know they were watching me. I still remember how the pine needles felt under my palms as I crawled into my tent that second night. Cold, damp, and somehow charged with something I couldn't name. We'd pitched camp near that small lake in northern Michigan, just 10 minutes from the road, but miles from feeling safe. Midnight found us sprawled around the dying embers of the fire, roasting marshmallows and trading ghost stories. When the adults herded us off to sleep, the woods sighed back into silence. Crickets chirped, wind whispered through the pines. I was half asleep when a soft whimper pulled me fully awake. At first I thought it was Roy, my tent mate, shifting in his sleeping bag. But this was different. The faint sobbing of a woman echoing from somewhere deep in the forest. My heart slammed so hard I thought it might wake everyone. I nudged Roy. "Do you hear that?" He strained to listen, eyes wide. Then came the unmistakable, blood-curdling scream. Raw, desperate, human. Flashlights in the adult leader's hands bobbed toward the tree line, but all they revealed was swirling fog and impenetrable darkness. The silence that followed was worse than the scream. Even the crickets froze. We stood there, breath visible in the cold air, wondering whether to go help or run. We stayed put. 45 minutes later, just as some of us dared to drift towards sleep, I jerked awake again. My tent wall bulged inward like something heavy was pushing against it. I grabbed my flashlight and unzipped the door, then froze. A massive black shape crouched over my bag, claws hooked in the nylon. I knew enough about bears to hate them in that moment. I yelled, threw a lantern, smashed pots together, anything to scare it off. It retreated just far enough to be a dark silhouette between the trees, eyes glinting at us. Then, impossibly, I heard that scream again, coming from the beast itself. A woman's shriek ripped through the night and cut off as abruptly as the first one had. The bear roared, turned on its hind legs, then vanished into the woods. We didn't sleep after that. At first light, we packed only essentials and hiked fast back to the lodge. The 10-minute trail took us 15, each step heavier than the last. The forest felt different, like it was watching us leave. Park rangers later found paw prints and torn fabric, suggesting a hungry juvenile bear drawn by the one boy's hidden snacks. They shrugged at the screams, foxes, coyotes, mating cats, or just your imagination. But none of them could explain why time had stretched on that final trek, or why the scream sounded so eerily human. I'll never go back. Sometimes on quiet nights I still hear that scream, echoing in my mind unanswered and raw as if the forest itself is crying out. I still remember that moment, lying in my sleeping bag and staring into total blackness so complete, I had to flex my fingers just to be sure my eyes were open. My son's steady breathing next to me was the only comfort on that remote ridge, hidden from the world by towering pines and a winding river bend. We'd spent the afternoon setting up camp, laughing at my clumsy attempts to remember every piece of gear. By midnight, the forest had fallen silent, too silent. Then came the first sound, something brushing the tent fabric in slow, deliberate circles, like fingertips mapping our shelter. My heart hammered as I reached for my flashlight, but the beam skittered over nothing but fog and tree trunks. Moments later, a chorus rose outside, raucous laughter, a sing-song chatter so cheerful it made my skin crawl. The words were all wrong, like someone on the other side of a radio tuned between stations. I felt eyes on us, a presence towering just beyond the thin nylon wall, counting my every breath. I froze, every instinct screaming to flee, but to where? The woods swallowed any path back to safety. Hours passed in a haze of fear and disbelief. At one point, I imagined my son vanished from the tent, whisked away by that invisible force. I snapped awake at dawn to find us both trembling but unharmed, the forest now alive with birdsong. It was as if the darkness itself had released us. One moment we were prisoners, the next free. We packed silently, the heaviness lifting with the morning mist. As we climbed back down the trail, my son paused and whispered, "Goodbye, forest." A flutter of wings answered him, a hush of birds gathering above us before scattering into the sky. I realized then that something had watched us all night, something I couldn't name or explain, but that strangely had somehow cared enough to see us safely home.